Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 26 of the Big Boys Table. It's Fatherdumb. Because my father's dumb. What's up, Mesk? So they say. Legends say he is still teaching the youth to this very day from the grave. Oh boy, so we had a little bit of an oopsie daisy at the beginning of trying to set this shit up. That is why your speakers are listed as you. Because I can't actually connect to my own fucking server's voice channels. I have to call Mesk directly because Discord is a functioning piece of software. I don't understand, man. I don't get it. Like, why? Why does...
I mean, when you build an IM client out of a web page built into an operating system's worth of just garbage shit, is very obviously just data mining people, you can't really be too surprised when nothing works.
I guess not. So, here we are. It's episode 26. We have a new bit of user interface here. We have the chat in a different place. We got a various dad-themed, dad-skinned emojis. That was actually there last time, but I'm making note of it today. And we actually have a window into my reality. Yes, we are going to be seeing what I am.
Is that where you store the feet pics?
Something like that. So, I actually have a plan for this particular episode.
Uh-oh.
I have a plan, and, you know, I kind of fancy myself new Martin Luther King. So,
who's that?
It's just some guy who had a dream. I think that's what Obama said when he's pardoning all dreamers.
Is that where the penis-shaped cactus image comes from?
Probably.
Did he ever release his birth certificate?
I don't believe so, no.
Nobody will ever know that he's really from Pakistan.
That's okay.
Barack Hussein Obama.
We have something for you to riff off of, Mesk. Because our favorite company, Google, has announced that they are going to be launching a platform for game development called the Stadia. No. I'm sure you've heard about this.
Isn't that like one of those things that like they stream you a game?
Yes. So this is OnLive's sequel. Do you remember OnLive? Did you ever use OnLive?
No, but I have heard of various services that have attempted to run this, and all of which have crashed and burned hard.
So one argument is Google is basically the only company that could probably attempt to do this. Maybe you could have like one of the Chinese companies do it, but they don't really have the foothold in the Western market. But even so, as you say, there are a lot of examples of this just blowing up in people's faces. We don't really have any examples of people doing it right. I understand why people want to stream games, because if you think about it, especially with shitty Western internet that you have to pay to have a data cap for.
I mean, even not accounting for, how shitty the American internet is. Just the way physics works, the way the internet works, you will never get responsive gameplay streaming a fucking video and inputs back and forth over the internet.
Well, that is definitely a concern, but I would even say that that's secondary. Like, the main issue that streaming games seeks to solve is the fact that, unlike in the world of music and movies and every other kind of entertainment, there is no way for you to just start watching, start listening. There's no equivalent to that. There's no corollary, English, to gaming. There's nothing like that. And so you don't have any opportunity as a gamer, a skeptic, to just fire up your web browser and go to stadia.com/stream and try to figure out some way to play your game without actually having to wait a long time to download it. And that's what streaming games seeks to resolve, but it is going to be a lower quality experience, just like streaming music and streaming TV shows and streaming movies.
But where is that a problem, though? I've never once heard that is a problem for anyone. Also, the vast majority of people who play quote-unquote games today play it on their phones anyways. So it's like they're trying to make a problem, and they're trying to make people think it's a problem through clever marketing that's not very clever because we've been through this. And then they say, hey, we can solve this problem that nobody has. Yeah. Kind of like how Valve is currently working on VR goggles.
Oh, yeah, that's coming up. That's next. But I just wanted to click through this website a little bit. Not just to show off the fact that we can do that now, because we have the technology, unlike Google. But because some of the jargon and, again, marketing that they are using in this website to push this product is very strange. Now, the homepage that you get just from searching this shit up on DuckDuckGo or whatever is stadia.dev. And I don't know why it's .dev. I don't know why there's not like a consumer-based one, but this is for developers, apparently. And the tagline, as soon as you walk in, is push the envelope of game development with Stadia. So I don't even know what the fuck that means.
What?
How do you push the envelope of game development with something that, for one, isn't even out yet, for another, has only been evidenced as a failure, like the deployment method of your product has only blown up in people's faces, not gotten any real tangible benefit for the company, let alone lasted as a method of deployment of video games for a long-term period of time. Like, there's not any, like, historical avenues where you can go down and you could say, well, look, this company did this and this product was good here, and that's why there's merit for this one. Now, I'm all for trying until you get it right or whatever, but the idea that they would drum this up as a tagline is the first thing that they throw in front of your face is so bizarre to me. Like, who are they actually marketing this to? What kind of game developer, or even aspiring game developer, would be interested in something that brazenly disregards your intelligence as soon as you walk into the website?
People who use Chrome and Facebook is the first guess. Like, not really game developers, but game developers. You know, people who think that releasing games on Steam is indie games, even though they're using a central publisher. Those kinds of people.
Well, I've clicked one link to learn more about Stadia, and the very next tagline I see is, take game development further than you thought possible. Again, with a seamless cloud gaming platform. It's a fucking streaming service, dude!
Cloud, there's that fucking word again.
Now,
that's
one thing
going to be as bad as 3.
That is going to be as bad as 3. I bet there's going to be 3 clouds. Let me see how many devices they offer.
If you're in the development world, cloud is even worse than 3. There is nobody who likes cloud.
The other weird language that they end up using, like built to evolve right alongside your game, seems to, like, either they're targeting people who are going to release shit that's not actually ready for release, which I guess is everybody in this current industry, because again, your game isn't finished when you release it, so it has to evolve after release. Or they're talking about people who are going to be making these like games as a service thing, and like just marketing to those people right out of the gate is a real fucking.
It would be
it's
great
a tell
if they all went onto that platform and they all tanked together.
Yeah, that's true.
That'd be wonderful. It was just like a giant Titanic honeypot that sunk to the bottom of the sea and took all these games and services fucks with it.
Next gen software optimized for the cloud.
Optimized for the cloud.
How do you optimize software for the cloud? I don't understand. Like,
apply chemotherapy directly to forehead.
What the fuck? Like, what does this sentence mean? What does this tagline mean? They're using cross-platform graphics and computing APIs.
Yeah, those things that don't actually exist.
But what?
Because Linux has been such a shit show forever. Cross-platform is a meme.
Cloud is a meme. Well,
but I mean, this comes from the same company who promotes shadow banding and control of information and trying to rig elections and shit. So,
with a powerful development toolset made from top middleware and technology partners. top middleware? They actually used middleware as it's their marketing. This is an elaborate April Fool's joke that it lasted an extra month or something. What the fuck? Who wrote this? Who wrote this?
Pajit.
The Stadia platform enables cross-screen gameplay? Cross-screen gameplay? Across epic, TVs, laptops, desktops? Yeah, because those two are different. Tablets and mobile devices.
So you can play games on your shitty fucking TV.
Why does this
exist?
That you
can already do just by plugging it into your computer that you already own.
Oh boy. So again, really the only thing that I can see is like a potential I understand the source of people thinking that maybe they should explore something like this is the only thing that isn't just pure marketing, just nonsense, is the low barriers to entry, that's marketing nonsense. But the way what they're actually describing is the idea that they don't have to wait X amount of minutes to hours to download a game. But since that is the status quo, I don't see why this is a huge issue, that we need an entirely new set of software that isn't actually new because you're engaging with I said I don't understand why we need this as a platform, an entirely new platform.
We don't.
With new software that's not actually new software because you're engaging with top middleware developers. What the fuck? Why do we need Google to come in and what is the market they're trying to fill? I don't see the demand for what they're doing at all.
Well, that's what marketing is about making people think they need something when they really don't. And Google's very good at that because they've managed to infest everything with their cancer. And there is not a sane person on the world that would read any of that and be like, this sounds good. It's more like trendy faggots who think, wow, Google's a great company because they're so diverse. I wonder what epic product they're making next. Ooh, I can stream video games from my wireless router here in Africa.
Yeah, that's South Africa to you.
And there was one person I know who used a service just like this. And he said if he was situated anywhere except literally next door to a main backbone for the infrastructure, it was unplayably laggy, and also it is incredibly bandwidth intensive, as to be expected because you're streaming video probably at 60 FPS. You can't do this in Canada. Any country like Canada, this just simply won't be a service available to you.
There's a YouTuber by the name of Super Bunny Hop, and he actually produced a video back when On Live was still in business, and he was talking about his experience with a game, a platform that was similar to what Stadia is talking about. Obviously, it wasn't backed by Google, but On Live is very infamous. I tried it a few times, and it was shit every single time. There's a massive input delay, and it was actually very grainy. It was like I was playing a YouTube video. And one of the things that never happened to me, but did happen to this guy, is apparently the options for the UI, even though you're playing it on a PC, was designed for an Xbox 360 or something. It's really, really bad console UI. And the option to turn off the ability for people to just randomly join your broadcast is hidden behind a bunch of other walls and stuff. And so you don't even know where it is when you're popping in. You don't even know that that's a fucking feature. They don't advertise that. Or at least they didn't for this guy. He just didn't know about it. I don't know. I'm not really willing to give On Live the fucking benefit of the doubt. But basically what ended up happening is while he was playing GTA 4 or 5 or whatever game was out there at the time, I think it was 4, there was just occasional sounds of potato chips crunching. And he didn't know what the fuck was happening. He's like, what? Is that part of the game? And then at some point, he heard from his speakers a very deep whisper of, play better. Somebody was watching him and broadcasting audio into his living room. What the fuck? How do you even allow something like that? The point I'm bringing that story up is not
That's
just that
not
it's
even new
insane.
though. Like
Oh yeah,
all
I
these
mean,
all these console ports always enable voice chat,
yes.
and usually without any settings on. Like that's a notorious issue with Unreal 3 is all these games where they would just have forced voice only that at best maybe you could disable through an ini change, but a lot of them you couldn't. You had to
Yeah.
actually get it like a crack for it.
Yeah, it's insane. And so the reason why I bring that up is that was just some random person watching his broadcast of GTA 4. It's not like he was playing in the game with him. He's just watching through the on live service. And if you can just do that, like Google's so notorious for being shit with privacy. You think that they're going to hold back from something like that? Like you think that that's not going to be a security risk or something? I mean,
They're probably going to record everything you've got. They've got the
no, yeah.
infrastructure for it.
Yeah, exactly. So that'll be charged to your fucking cable bill, I'm sure.
While you're molesting little Billy, they've got like 30 white coats watching you, jerking it.
Hey, man, that's racist. Some of them have to be brown. The coats, that is.
Oh man, this is California. You can't be brown. You can only be butthurt for brown people.
Oh, okay.
Brown people have to be protected from the environment where we shake hands and exchange emoticons
And get paused.
and get paused.
So that is Stadia, Google's latest announcement. This is one of the leading product announcements that swept the scene for all of 2 days, and then everybody forgot about it. But I figured I would bring it up because it was hilarious. The next one in the string is the Valve Index, which is what you referenced earlier. So this is high fidelity virtual reality, according to the tagline.
So a neat fact about virtual reality, I'm sure I've brought up a couple times, is because all modern quote unquote games have just relied super heavily on screen space crap, and screen space is not at all frame accurate, and it's very, very slow and produces a lot of ghosting. Anybody who actually tries to develop for virtual reality has immediately realized this does not work in virtual reality because anything less than like 120 FPS induces motion sickness, and the ghosting makes it really, 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 really bad. So that's why you're seeing forward rendering starting to make a return, because it has taken virtual reality and people making their first prototypes with it for people to realize that maybe screen space is bad. But people will still keep using it. And what's more likely is that virtual reality will disappear and you won't see any real post-processing ever again.
Yeah, I mean, if and when VR ends up hitting the dustbin, that means that there's not going to be any reason to not use all that screen space junk for these companies that don't really care about, these companies that engage with top middleware developers. So, what a disaster. So apparently they have they're like marketing all of their various elements, and I think this starts at a crazy price. Let me see if I can find that.
All of VR is at an insane price. That's another thing that will prohibit it from ever being explored.
It's $999.
Yeah, that's more than what I even thought. I think some of the other entry pieces were at like 300, 400 or something.
Yeah, so if you already have some other VR software and you just want bits of the Valve Index, it's almost $300. It's after tax, it's $300 for the fucking controllers alone. So, $500 for the headset, $150 for the station, which tracks your movement, and then you can make it cheaper.
You know that's getting logged as well.
Of course. Like, I can't imagine that they wouldn't be tracking all this stuff.
I mean, at this stage, it'd surprise me if people aren't tracking something.
Okay, not that I was planning on looking at this, but you did mention California earlier, and at the bottom of this page it says, California residents, warning! Cancer and reproductive harm associated with materials used in base station housing, power supply, and cables. And then it links to a government website about warnings.
What?
Let's see what we find here. Proposition 65. Oh, I think I've heard about this. This is why like G Fuel's got lead in it or something.
G Fuel's got lead in it.
Well, they only talk about it because of this. Yeah. It requires businesses to provide warnings to Californians about significant exposures to chemicals that cause cancer, birth defects, or other reproductive harm. I think buying any Valve product is a check mark for all of those.
I
So
mean, it's California with all the immigrants and inbreeding. I don't think they were ever worried about birth defects.
destroyed. So I mean, I don't really actually have much to say about this besides the fact that I'm waiting
It's
for
a waste of money.
Yes, it is a waste of money, and I'm also waiting for Half-Life 3 to be on the VR because that's the only way they'll sell any of these.
You know, that is something that I would expect them to do, is to shovel out all this VR shit, let it sit for a year, and then be like, oh yeah, we have Half-Life 3 and it's VR exclusive.
Yeah, I would not be surprised, especially if it ends up going the way that we're thinking it's going, where especially because of the price, but also just because of the lack of supporting rendering techniques that anybody knows how to do anymore. You're not even going to see games that don't cause people to puke. And so nobody's going to bother buying them.
It would be really funny because even if it tanked really hard, it wouldn't affect Valve at all. Like they would just keep marching on and be like, oh, well, it was a failure, whatever.
Well, yeah, apparently their artifact card game, their MTG for Jocks copycat is like that's just been an entire total failure. Just like my ability to speak the English language there. And so I don't really know what to make of that because I don't play card games. But apparently, I mean, they're still doing fine.
Like one of the last markets you even want to try to get into right now.
I really don't understand the whole Valve developer thing anymore. Anyways, like they could probably just sit on.
They don't have any developers.
they could just sit on like Dota 2 and CS:GO for the next foreseeable future. Not to mention all the shit that they get from just Steam as a body. Like they don't actually have to do anything at this point. So it's not really surprising to me that their latest attempts at entering into the industry again as developers are not really all that confidence inspiring.
It's probably just random people in the company that they're like, hey, I got an idea. And Gabe like sticks his like triple chin out of a mountain of money and is like, do whatever the fuck you want.
Yeah, exactly. Now,
and he goes back to swimming
in his pool of cash.
Yeah.
That smells suspiciously of pizza thighs.
Mm-hmm. He's definitely doing some cooking in there.
So, just as an aside, I actually did not pull this up earlier, but Epic Games and their store. I think we talked a little bit about this the last time or last couple of times, but it's still in the news, like it's still in the public consciousness. I don't really know.
I'm very butthurt about it.
Yeah, like I mean, I would be very upset if I had to, in order to play a game that I wanted to play, I had to, become privy to like Tencent's insanity. But that's.
I mean, you already are if you're using Discord.
Well, yeah, that's true, but I wouldn't want to further introduce myself to that. So, like, I can understand people's outrage in that respect, but I don't understand the point of, like, they've started, a lot of people have started, like, bandwagoning on developers that agree to go to Epic and the Epic Games Store. And to me, this is mountain out of a molehill, not because...
We need to go back to an age of physical copies.
Well, that would definitely short circuit a lot of this shit, but it's just so inconvenient now. People are so lazy. They don't want to go to the store. They don't want to get it. I mean, half these people have fucking Amazon Prime. They could just get it delivered.
Yeah.
But, yeah, they're not going to for whatever reason. I kind of miss opening up game cases and actually, like, reading the manuals and shit, but they don't really do that anymore. Nobody really bothers.
Shit is what brought us into the age of games as a service and all these licenses that are end user license agreements that say, hey, you don't own anything. You're extended a license that can be revoked at any time. Although I'm not sure a lot of those would actually stand up in court, but attempting to do so is beyond the scope of most people's finances. So, but it's still like incredibly scummy.
In related news, it seems like they are actually going to the point where they are giving out financial inducements to stay on the fucking Epic Games Launcher platform. Epic Games leaks a $10 credit for securing account. So, if you enable two-factor authentication for your Epic Games account, then you are apparently going to get $10 that you can spend on their platform. And, like, I mean, whatever, but if it's really that bad, like they must actually be hemorrhaging users or something, or they're just not growing as fast as they want to. It seems really crazy that
I
that they're
think
going that route.
a lot of their stuff is probably really innocent, but they don't actually know how public relations works because they just like accidentally became popular as the extent of Fortnite, and how
Mm-hmm.
basically all these games just threw players at Fortnite because they were all such miserable failures, like PUBG and
Yes.
Daisy and all these others. They basically just funneled players into Epic, and suddenly Epic's like, hey, we're popular again, and we haven't been popular outside of developers for the past like near 20 years, and now we don't know what to do. And then they're like, wait a second, we could get internet famous off of this. We could use our little platform here, and I mean, maybe they had planned it for years and ahead, but their launcher was not ready to be used by anybody, much less fucking average Joe who only uses Steam.
Yeah.
And they tried to turn it into Steam when it wasn't ready, and then it turns out it's full of all this analytical crap for whatever reason.
Yep.
And
Scans your Steam library, your browser history, all sorts of crazy shit.
instead of just removing it and being like, hey, we respect your privacy, we were just trying to collect information to learn more about your stuff, they just dodge it and then leave it in there. And it's like, I hate Steam. I hate monopolies. I hate the idea of digital distribution. I mean, sure, it's convenient, but convenience is something that is very evil and quickly turns into toxicity like Steam. Because Steam is awful. Steam runs Chrome. Chrome is their browser. People get rootkits through Steam's browser because there is no security whatsoever. So I only run Steam by disabling the browser, which disables everything and all, but it's still bloated and ugly. And you have no choice but to use Steam for 90% of the things out there. It's DRM that doesn't work. And if you're a developer, it's even worse because they take a huge cut out of things. So that's why people want to go to Epic, because Epic is just objectively superior as far as a business deal is concerned. But instead of like taking that opportunity and providing something that was actually like competitive, they just shit all over it. Epic is such a weird fucking company. So you had Unreal 99, which is one of the best shooters that was made. You had Unreal 2003, which was ho hum, and Unreal 2004, which was pretty good. And then everything after that just went to shit. They were like, oh no, PC sucks. Let's make console games. And he ended up with Gears of War, which I haven't played, but I haven't seen too much encouraging things of. And then
You're
they're
not
like,
missing
wait, no,
much.
let's go crawl back to PC because PC is better. And then they make Unreal Tournament 3, which is quite possibly the worst game they've ever made. And so all our gaming ventures after Unreal 2004 were flops at best. And but you had Unreal Engine 3, which for a long time was basically inaccessible to the end user until Unreal Development Kit came along, which was pretty good. And then they sat on this huge amount of money from that because it was the dominant game engine, and it is still the dominant game engine. And then they made Unreal Engine 4, which they have been so very, 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 very scatterbrained in what they're doing anything with. Because first they tried to push VR, which is a failure. And I guess that they basically, the way they think it is, well, VR takes off. We want to be the leading engine because that's going to get us the most licenses. It's going to get us the most money. You know, when you think of it that way, it makes sense. But you have to realize that VR is never actually going to take off because it's inaccessible to the average user. If the average user was even thinking of trying something like Stadia because of, you know, I don't want to buy a PC, there's no way you're going to get even a tiny fraction of users to think about dumping hundreds of dollars into VR for one or two fucking games. It's just not going to happen. The entry barrier is just way too high, even if the shit was functional. And nobody's going to develop for something that risky. The vast majority of VR games are built for non-VR and have VR as an aside, like Subnautica. And yeah, but they still jumped on it and they ditched all this shit that was going to be really good, like uh uh what was it? Distance field global illumination was really one of the big ones, where you could finally get rid of static lighting. Because static lighting is a huge hassle for the developer. It's really annoying to set up light maps. It's really time consuming. It's not like normal UV wrapping. But they ditched all that even when they had a fairly, promising looking prototype they used for their kite demo. They ditched all of it. They ditched all this other stuff, and it has taken years for them to just now start looking at fixing some self-shadowing issues. And there's still a lot of issues. Like we are currently working with Steam, and HKS is setting up integration with Steam for a game, or at least a client for a game. And there's just not like really a lot of information out there for doing this. It is very much just like completely blind, just screwing around trying to get stuff to work. And the only reason Steam integration is even necessary is because there is no real built-in way to do this normally. Epic was going to have such a system, but as far as we know, at earliest, it's going to come late this year. So there's like a lot of like really, really basic stuff that they should have really addressed before even releasing Unreal Engine 4 that they didn't. But that's not even really the problem, though, because they have limited staff and, it's a complicated piece of software and whatever. But Unreal Tournament, they were going to make another Unreal Tournament, except they tried to fucking crowdsource it, which nobody was ever going to even tantalize the thought that was going to end well. And what do you know? They canned it. So Unreal Tournament's dead. Absolutely 100% completely dead. Fortnite was just this thing that was supposed to be like Minecraft.
Yeah.
And then it turned into a battle royale because that was more popular. It kind of brings us back to Titanfall turning into Call of Duty because that was more popular. So these things all just kind of like abandoned what they were because some fad was more popular than what they were actually trying to do. They lose all sense of identity in the process.
Yeah, they lose everybody who was interested in it because they weren't the fad, they weren't the trend.
Yeah.
And then they, the people who are already into the trend are into the other stuff. They're not into this, random new thing, so they just lose everybody.
Yeah, so Epic definitely like to me it just seems like they don't know what they're doing at all. They have people in their staff who are really really good at what they do, which is making engine related stuff and shader related stuff and technical stuff. But they don't have game designers. They don't have people who understand anything about distribution or communication or anything whatsoever, because so many of their problems with their launcher would have been avoided just by actually like doing maybe a day's of worth of research, like maybe using Steam a little bit, maybe looking at the general public opinion of things about Tencent and data mining, like all this really obvious shit that you shouldn't even really need to research to know it's just not going to fly very well. And at the very least, you should be more transparent about what you're doing before people discover it and then make a big shit show over it. And then actually address it when it does happen in a proper way. And yeah.
Yeah, radio silence was not the play, pretty clearly. That's what's contributed, I think, a lot to their... I mean, not that they were really in anybody's good graces. The only reason anybody even really thought about the Epic Games launcher is actually because of Fortnite. And for them to just quietly try to sweep under the rug the idea that they've been data mining you the whole time. It's not
I've
exactly...
been using the launcher since shortly after it was first released for Unreal Engine 4. And it has hardly changed since then. And just searching it, like, I don't think you can even really search it right now, or at least not very well. Like, the way it lists stuff for assets, like the asset marketplace, is a fucking disaster. Like, that launcher needs to be just rethought from the ground up.
That bad, huh? I remember only barely using
bad.
it a little bit for Unreal 4 back when... I don't know, back when I was actually trying to make something in Unreal 4, so that was 2 years ago.
And the thing is, it had stuff like Friends List already. Like, it's had that for years. So there's, like, a lot of people's complaints that I don't think they actually really did any research on, too. But it's it definitely could use a lot of improvement. Like, what is with people and launchers and stuff just being so bad? Like, look at Blizzard's launcher.
Yeah.
That still performs really bad on this fucking system.
Well, I think you were literally launching an Unreal 4 map in the time it took you to launch the Blizzard app, so...
Yeah, like, just to switch tabs in the Blizzard launcher, it took longer than loading an unloaded asset in Unreal 4 and building shaders for it.
Reasonable. It's that fucking Electron shit or whatever they built it out of. The weird chromium stuff.
I competed at launching Blizzard's launcher versus launching Unreal 4 in a project with over 60 gigabytes worth of data in it, and then loading a map in that with baked lighting and stuff. Unreal 4 launched faster.
As
And then
expected.
once it finished, it was actually responsive, unlike Blizzard's launcher.
Yeah, that's right. If you start to click around, you'll add to the time.
Yep.
So we're actually going to get into Blizzard Insanity because, believe it or not, they done fucked up a few more times. But outside of that, before we get into that, I actually want to talk a little bit about everybody's favorite magician, Randy Pitchford. Now, I have had the pleasure of playing Randy Pitchford's seminal masterpiece, Duke Nukem Forever. And I just sat that game done. Yeah?
I tried to LP that a couple of years ago, like when it first came out. I got to the Leroy joke. I Alt F4'd, I deleted the game.
You know, I had that sensation that maybe that's something I should have done. Now,
that was a final draw, man.
See, that's not, you weren't even a third into the game. And a third is an important number because it's 3. And the final boss had 3 phases, which means it had 3 button mash QuickTime event sections. By the way, just as an aside.
Strength tap.
Yes, strength tap. And just as an aside. I had to lower my resolution so that I could press spacebar fast enough.
What?
Yep.
Fucking what?
Yep. I had to lower my resolution from 16 by 9, like, to 1080 or like 1240 by 1080 or something. I had to lower it pretty massively. It was like 1280 by 720 was what I had to lower it to. And then I had to lower it again to make the final boss. That was just the opening. Like, in the opening hour of the game, I had to lower my resolution. Now, this isn't something I figured out on my own. Somebody in the chat said, if the button isn't working, this is not normal. Lower your resolution. Like, that's a guide. Like, that. He was quoting a fucking walkthrough. The walkthrough tells you to lower your res. Like,
see, Duke Nukem Forever was like some prototype that got thrown around. And it somehow ended up in Gearbox's hands. So what did Gearbox do? They released it as is.
I
remember because there was a leak. Remember, there was a leak prior to it being released, like a long time, and people were like, "Wow, this is absolute garbage."
Yes.
And then Gearbox got a hold of it and like, "Oh, maybe they'll finish it."
No,
it was 1-to-1. Yeah. I played it. It was literally 1-to-1.
Yep. It's horrible.
That's like right back to Heat of the Swarm and the final cinematic getting leaked, and people are like, "Wow, that's so bad. There's no way that's real." It was real.
That wasn't even, I mean, they did have that extra shot of like a billion Kerrigans in cloning vats or something, and that was cut out, but everything else was completely accurate.
It was all the really bad parts were real.
Now, I'm not just bringing up Duke Nukem Forever for shits and giggles, not just because it's topical, but also because 3. And have I got a treat for you, Mesk? If you want to fire up that Mixer stream real quick, I have Borderlands 3 official announcement gameplay trailer.
Hold on, I gotta
it's
find that
3 minutes and 40 seconds long.
Oh god. Why must we hurt? Why must we pee into our own mouths? Where did we all go wrong as a species? Has the white man gone too far? Is it time for the Kangs to take over? I think so.
We was Kangs, dude.
We was Kangs.
So I'm going to quickly tab on over to my desktop so we can get the full view experience.
I'm still launching the browser. Mixer doesn't like working in Pale Moon. I don't know why, but it's probably Pale Moon trying to protect me.
I wouldn't put it past Pale Moon. Pale Moon's a good boy.
Pale Moon's also made by furries. Furries are just looking out for my GIF.
I'm not surprised it's made by furries. I still can't believe they doxed NoScript or whatever. Just fucking dumped it on the side of the road.
I see some Zeratul eyes.
Oh, yes.
Rating pending.
Rating pending. Let's see. This is 1080p, by the way, so...
Oh, that looks ugly.
Dude, this is alias to fuck.
Oh, no.
There's so
they
much.
Still haven't fixed this. How is 2K still in business, man? Oh my god. What the
There's
fuck?
Randy Pitchford.
fucking faces are so fucked. Have they never seen what a girl looks like?
Nope. Not even in his magic trick videos.
Those animations are horrendous. That is some really bad mocap.
I think the frame rate is off in this video.
They like forget to apply chat. Oh my god.
Oh, that.
Wow.
The projectiles from the bullet weren't even firing.
What? This is gross.
Is this?
The 3-point stand. Those effects are so fucking bad. The cheer flow.
I don't know, dude. I've never played these games.
That guy was floating in the air. The dog was floating in the air.
They copied a Star Wars vehicle.
This is really awful looking. That buggy was floating in the air. Yes, we enabled God rays in their shitty fucking post-processing volume.
The S in scrap was tilted, so it said crap. Ha! Ha! Dude, if you could hear the dubstep.
Look at their hair. Like, what is wrong with this?
What? That was sliding! It slid! Oh, lag. They lag! By the way, this is supposed to be a gameplay trailer.
Yeah, nobody does gameplay trailers anymore. Oh, those particle effects are so horrible.
Is that Randy Pitchford?
His arm is really deforming weirdly.
Oh shit,
So
that was a feminist.
That was my mom. There's something distinctly wrong with every single one of their animations.
Over 1 billion items. Wow, it's such an epic game. So much gameplay when you randomly generate numbers.
All this pointless fast cut crap. Like, is this supposed to get people interested?
Gameplay
Look,
trailer.
it's purple and green, man. Purple and green.
I really wish you had listened to the sound there because that would have really destroyed you. They just have this dubstep track.
Sound on.
Oh, okay.
Oh, look, it's the fucking stock overlay. What the fuck's it called? Lens flare. How does a video have any upvotes? Why would anybody even think about trying to support this piece of shit company?
So, what do you guys think of Borderlands 3?
Can you make a more boring trailer? Like, what was supposed to be catching about that?
Well, I don't know about catching, but as Bailethal pointed out in the chat, we do... Randy Pitchford did catch the voice actor for Claptrap and physically assaulted him in the fucking lobby of the, of the studio. Yeah, that's real. Let me see if I can find that one. Oh boy.
This is like the pinnacle of how to make a bad trailer. Like, first of all, you don't establish any story hooks. There's nothing interesting about this from a presentational perspective. Second of all, their graphics look like absolute shit. So why would you ever focus on any of them? Just render a CGI and hope nobody notices. Third, you don't show any gameplay. You basically show a guy is just running cycled mocap shit, standing and floating in the air, some really awful particle effects from like Warcraft 3 kind of stuff, and then purple and green indicators on stuff. And then you try to brag about 6 billion fucking random number like, none of this means anything. There's like no actual substance. Claptrap voice actor and former Gearbox vice president of licensing and business development David Eddings said last week he was not returning to the role in Borderlands 3 because of a pay dispute. He insisted on getting paid for his work. His previous performances were on the house because he was a Gearbox executive. But he and the studio couldn't agree on terms.
Yes.
I don't know, like, what's complicated about voice acting terms? Hey, do us this much lines, we'll pay you.
Nope, Randy Pitchford didn't want it.
A multi-tweet response in which he also raised allegations.
I just wanted the tweets, but...
One of the things that really just gets me is how official news outlets refer to tweets.
Yeah, that is journalism now.
People make a tweet, and then that's like newsworthy. Like, there was no forest. He wanted it.
I just want to. I just want to have that one line cropped out, please.
He wanted it and reveled in it. The issue today is that Mr. Eddings is bitter and disgruntled about having been terminated. He was offered 2 times scale. He refused. I don't want him to do it unless he wants to do it, as motivation affects performance. Oh, unionization. A union wouldn't allow an employer to force an employee to perform a task outside their title. Yeah, I have heard from inside Blizzard that unions with voice acting are a pain. I never got any specifics, but apparently they can't just hire people that are good. They have to just take whatever they get. Which that was the general context that I got out of it. Unions are just so fucking stupid. I've never heard a single good thing about unions at all. It's just like, oh, people are bad at their job, so we have to band together to make sure that bad people can get paid too. He wanted it.
Just focus on that one.
Being a little randy there, Mr. Pitchford.
Wowie.
Was this also a magic trick? Did you hypnotize?
Well, I'll show you a magic trick. You may recognize this name from what UED Commander posted in the chat this morning.
Reawakening.
So this is some custom content. This is where we shit on some custom content creators, you know? Legends of Arcane one day, StarCraft Reawakening the next. Now, normally I would just say...
2013 from?
That's just because they use Blizzard fan art or something, I don't know. So...
okay.
Yeah, it has nothing to do... It's not like... It doesn't have the logo. There is no logo. There is a logo, but they didn't use it here. They used it in the... It's SC2 Mapster. Dude, honestly, I would just assume that they tried to do something and it didn't work, so they just left it.
Define the rules!
Don't look at that. So, I don't want to spend too much time on this one, since we already did shoot the shit about it in the special bus, where it belongs. But I had to note. For one, he lists DLCs, which are actually just the original campaigns, like just extra campaigns like Enslavers. But why are they listed as DLCs? Also, the first thing that jumps right out at you when you look at this page is that you see Live the Experience of SC1, released in 1998 like a modern game, and enjoy it. This is for StarCraft 2. This is not a modern game. Are you fucking high? What do you mean? Like a modern game? What does that mean?
We want to bet it's just using mass recall shit.
Yes.
Because that I guarantee that's what they use. This mod. God damn it! Why am I always right?
That was the thing.
Son
I was
of a
getting to that one,
bitch.
but you got me.
God damn it.
This mod is based from the one made by Mass Recall. Also, classic broken image. Don't even know what it is.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, is that supposed to be broken?
I didn't fucking block it, so no, it's not. It's just busted.
Okay, just making sure. Maybe Image Shack finally gave out for them.
Yeah,
bucket.
photo bucket. Fucking Christ.
You didn't pay to externally link your images there, bucko. I'm sorry.
Now, there is like a patch or issues section or something. Let me see. Ah, yes. This is the most recent file that was updated. It says rebalanced stalker attack, which UED Commander was very perplexed
You got
about.
cut off.
I was just saying that it rebalanced the stalker attack, and stalkers are apparently in Brood War, and this is also very loyal to the original project. I would open it up, but I don't want to destroy my computer with the SC2 editor, so I'll just leave that to you, faithful viewers, who feel like giving this one a go. Let Defiler rules and whoever the fuck else is responsible for this, Travis. Do you know what you think?
I was on Curse. If I was a Curse admin and I saw stuff like this in my subsidiaries, I would just quietly delete the website.
That's pretty appropriate, I think.
It's pretty embarrassing.
Well, you think that's embarrassing? I have a related news for you. Saw this on the Blizzard forums. Map editor not saving anymore. So, this poster comes on. It's technical support. It says, hey, I'm working with StarCraft Remastered. I've already created 3 maps. It's always fucking 3, dude. I just give up, honestly. If I had came here a little bit earlier, he would have had 3 fucking posts. So, you know what? Really just shame on me. Played it several times already. Now that I'm planning on creating my 4th map, it just doesn't save anymore. Yeah, he forgot to read the license that says you can only make 3 maps. Sorry, it's just the rule of 3. If create new map, add start locations, it doesn't save. It stays as untitled. No pop-up window to set where to save file and put title. But when I open my previous maps, make some changes, save. It works perfectly fine. Why is this happening? Please help. He would not get any help. But I do have a post in here from Grant Davies, a Blizzard StarCraft Remastered Classic Games developer. Would you like to guess what that says?
No.
SEM Draft is a great choice. Given that there are superior third-party alternatives, we do not actively support StarEdit anymore, and in future releases we will no longer ship it. Blizzard is no longer going to ship the fucking editor for Remastered. They're done. They gave up. It's over, guys. SCM Draft 1.
Holy fuck. And he learns this in a fucking forum post.
Yes.
Instead of a launcher message or something.
Nope. This is actually the only place this... I looked to see if there's an announcement anywhere. Nope.
Oh, man. These people get paid. They're paid to update the engine, quote-unquote. It's supposed to work with the original StarCraft. And they're not even... Fuck!
Of course, the only replies are, thank you for letting us know.
People would be fucking you shooting on fucking nuts, and they'd be like, "Thanks for your fucking help there, Blizzard Entertainment.
Balefal's chat
Thanks
was on
for
screen for a
relieving me of my contribution to the gene pool, as I would have polluted it with too much soy." Holy shit!
Can you believe it?
You know, I can believe it. I've dealt with Blizzard for so many years. I can believe it. They basically said the same fucking thing when Frozen Throne came out. Yeah, we're aware of all this shit. We don't care. So, am I surprised? No. Can I believe it? Yes. Is it depressing? Yes. But, hey, it's the current year. You can identify as a table.
I am the table.
Or you can have cheese thrown at you, have an allergic reaction, and die because you're so inbred.
I have to redo the entire thing. Hold on. All right, cool. We're back. And Audacity is starting. Okay, so I got one more for you for Blizzard. World of Warcraft.
Oh dear.
World of Warcraft Classic now has a release date and a beta test. They're beta testing the Classic edition of the game that already came out.
They have to, because it's not the same edition of the game that came out.
Yep.
This is actually reversed from Legion. Rather than actually use the old version of the game, they took Legion and they have tried to make Legion play more like Classic. So see, people wanted to play Classic in some amount because World of Warcraft is filled with garbage like sharding that phases out people and stuff like that. And the game's basically dead and dumb. And you had, as it mentions in that article, the closing on Classic servers. But they're not hosting Classic. They took Legion and they're keeping in stuff like sharding, and they're turning that into Classic. This is completely a publicity stunt. And it is probably going to be a disaster, a very humorous disaster. Because nobody in Blizzard has actually played World of Warcraft before. Nobody in that company has any idea how World of Warcraft today plays. To the point that even their most diehard fans are getting really pissed off at them. And World of Warcraft Classic was a long time ago. A very long time ago. So, are any of them actually going to remember how World of Warcraft Classic played, much less actually functioned to play in that manner? No. No. You know, I had someone tell me about BNetD, which I'm sure some of you remember the name of. I've got to dig up the details about that because Blizzard's involvement with BNetD and other stuff like that was.
Was that like a private server?
Yeah, BNetD was one of the first, I think, major private servers for older Blizzards. Let me see if I can find it.
Might be worth taking a crack at. This is actually getting a little bit close to the games as a service, software as a service discussions that have been happening recently.
Oh yeah, I see.
I'm not sure if you. Oh, you saw it. You found it.
Well, this is one note. Is that Blizzard kind of like popularized the modern DMCA because it started with BNetD, and one of the main reasons why BNetD got shut down was actually because 007 Cheater was publicly humiliating them by posting their DMCA takedowns on the site and mocking them over and over and over and over and over and over again. But at that point, BNetD and stuff like that and its fork weren't actually illegal. But the thing is that oh, hold on here. Let me read this for a second. There's more to it than that. I'm going to try to put it all together. So, I see. So BNetD, basically Blizzard was trying to get as many famous people into their beta tests as possible. And Hacklist people got sucked into there because Blizzard doesn't do any research. And but apparently they knew how these people were, and they had moles that knew who these people were, and they thought it'd be great public relations. But these people just took their servers, and then they had servers for Warcraft 3 and Diablo 2 just running, and then the DMCA's and stuff got mocked, and then Blizzard, I guess, went more heavy-handed, and yeah, I don't have all the information right here, but I could probably dig it up elsewhere.
It's kind of surprising to me that they got the whole DMCA thing.
Oh yeah,
off of all
they
this.
couldn't shut down the website. That's what the problem was. The website this stuff was hosted on, Blizzard couldn't shut it down. It was hosted by a 15-year-old. They couldn't shut it down, so they went after BNetD instead.
Okay. So BNetD was actually hosted on a website owned by a 15-year-old.
Something like that. I don't have all. This is just across some chat logs I had from some years ago. I was just digging through them. But the thing is that those World of Warcraft Classic servers have been running forever. And they, like, for those of you who are maybe a little bit intimately familiar with MMOs and private servers, Lineage 2 is most infamous for its private servers because its source code for its servers was actually leaked. So anybody could basically run a game that was as complete as the official servers and then change it. But World of Warcraft was different. They didn't have that. So a lot of these private servers have been built upon years of like independent developers actually trying to make it functional. And some of them are pretty functional and all of them are closed source. And Blizzard at any point could shut these down if they wanted to. There's no magical thing that stops them from really attacking them. It's more like, do they do the research or do they care? But what really happens is Blizzard is like, oh, there's, 800 people, 8,000 people, whatever many number playing on private servers that don't like our official game because it's garbage. So what we can try to do is make them pay for us by saying we'll make a private server, and then we decide to DMCA these fuckboys on top of it. So it's kind of like a repeat of StarCraft 1. The only time Blizzard ever got involved with Korea was to fuck it up, to shut down Kespa, to stick their dick in, and to try to kill Brood War so they can make way for StarCraft 2, because they knew that StarCraft 2 could not compete. Just as they know that their classic World of Warcraft could not compete with the private servers, not just because Blizzard can't make a classic World of Warcraft that's as good as them, but because those servers were actually still seeing active development. There was actually still people working in these private servers. So Blizzard is a very, very malicious and spiteful company, and they're not going to get those players back. And anybody who actually remembers World of Warcraft Classic is probably going to tear apart their beta like crazy. I actually kind of look forward to this beta because I'm very interested to see the innumerable horrendous bugs and shit that it has. Because World of Warcraft as it is today is quite possibly one of the buggiest pieces of software in existence. Now imagine when they try to take something like that and make it work like something that they have no idea how it worked at all from like 15 years ago. Because well, it's more like 20 years ago. That's really how old World of Warcraft really is. It goes way back. And World of Warcraft today functions by extent of being a giant Jenga pile of hacks and boilerplates. So they're gonna try to start sticking their dicks into there. It's gonna end very well.
Oh, I'm sure it'll be just like remastered, if not worse.
Also, my push to talkie is 3.
Thanks. Mine is mouse 3.
Oh, wow. We got it going.
We got it going on, dude. It is kind of funny to me that World of Warcraft and apparently Warcraft 3 at the same time, they were like in development. I actually thought that for some reason, like World of Warcraft was entered into development after Warcraft 3 or towards the tail end of Warcraft 3's development cycle, but I guess they were both about the same time in terms of when they started. It's very peculiar because at some point you still have to play that Metzen adventure. And I would like to see what Warcraft 3 was originally meant to be. In all of its Metzen-y glory.
Oh, yeah, War of the Clans or whatever, yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen some animation related to it. Everybody has Metzen face.
Everybody. Of course. Yeah. Why wouldn't they? I mean, he's the one who wrote it. I'm sure he drew it all. I'm sure it's really just, it's his autobiography. In Warcraft 3 form.
Is such, like, if you look at StarCraft and Brood War, it's kind of interesting because Metzen gets more power in Brood War, and Brood War's writing just gets fucked. The other thing that you may or may not have noticed is that Warcraft 3, especially Frozen Throne, copies very, very heavily off of Brood War for its mission design. It is literally like copy pasted back to back. There is a mission for stopping Dark Templar from escaping. That's exactly the same as stopping the villagers from escaping. There is also the mission for gathering 10,000 minerals or whatever. That's, lo and behold, the same as the Garrosh mission.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of these other like gimmicky fucking maps all over the place that all are in that nature, like with your bases all the way across the map or all over all this fucking shit. because someone's been playing through StarCraft and documenting all this stuff that's very similar to Warcraft 3, to the point that it's actually really eerily scary how identical a lot of these are for Frozen Throne, especially. And I have really got to wonder, like, obviously we'll never really know the full extent, but I've really got to wonder just how much Metzen is actually responsible for StarCraft expansion turning into such a mess, and for Frozen Throne turning into such a mess. Because the leading theory that we have is that Metzen threw a bitch fit, because we know from designer Dave that someone threw a bitch fit that orcs
Good
weren't
morning,
in
YouTubers.
Frozen Throne, but I don't think a name was actually dropped. But think about it. Who would throw a bitch fit about their self-insert not being in the game? Obviously Metzen. So the theory, there's a couple of theories, but the two of the theories are it's some kind of prototype for World of Warcraft that they handed to investors. That's why you can't fail in it, because it's handed to just the investors. It's like, hey, here's a game concept. Will you fund it? Or it's literally something that Metzen actually made, because Blizzard was like, well, we don't have orcs because we don't have budget for it. Go make it yourself if you want it. And Metzen is like, I'm gonna make it.
Well, that would be the only
That's
self-starter thing he's done,
what you
I
get up
think.
with. Yeah, pretty much. And it just exudes just autism. Just complete unfiltered raw autism, to the point that it makes you physically ill. And that really is like the kind of changes they make to StarCraft and Brood War. I mean, StarCraft's campaign was never good, but in Brood War, things get a lot more gimmicky as fuck, and a lot more tedious in some cases. And think about Warcraft 3 and Frozen Throne. It's the same thing. And in both cases, their staffing changes and Metzen gains more power. And then it was at the point where basically Metzen was one of the only old staff that was left in the company. Because when Vivendi sold Blizzard to Ass Invasion, they didn't really sell Blizzard to Ass Invasion. There was a name for it, but basically they culled a lot of staff out of it, and they basically sold what was effectively Vivendi Gaming Division. But I think they still had like a majority stake in it or something like that. Like it was weird, but it's definitely not like how a typical sale goes through. But Metzen was probably left in there because he was a name that people knew. So he was kind of like just this popular name, or at least this well-known name that, Ass Invasion could associate with Blizzard. And as a result, he gained, more and more power throughout their projects. And as he did so, things got worse and worse and worse. To the point where designer Dave says that the best member on their team was the person who knew how JAS worked. Something they made for the purpose of their mappers who didn't have triggers, but nobody actually used it for anything. Like, this cross-referencing stuff with designer Dave is just holy shit. Like that, the fucking company is just a disaster. And then there was that other company that was involved with Brood War that they outsourced a whole bunch of shit to.
Yeah.
That's really funny. That's really hysterical.
Yeah, so I was just pulling up the Wikipedia page here, and you see actually above Blizzard Entertainment in the developer section is Sapphire Corporation. I don't know what significance it is that they are credited above Blizzard. Certainly not alphabetical order. But if you go and look at them, like they don't really... I mean, they have some games. They have a lot of games, but none of them are really that kooky.
It's all on shovelware platforms like the Nintendo 64.
And the last the games that they developed were for the Game Boy Advance. So
I don't really know. Like it's really, really, really strange.
And I've never heard of this company before. They were previously known as Cygnus Multimedia before 1994, but they didn't release anything. At least, yeah, they don't have anything here in their release. It says that they were known for both porting games and creating original titles, but where the fuck is their original titles? Like, it doesn't actually differentiate it within the Wikipedia article, because that's very useful.
And then it's not like they weren't a local company that Blizzard knew, because they were in Utah.
Yeah. So I don't know where the connection is. Like, I don't know why they were tapped to work on Brood War. I don't know what the significance of it is.
Because I would have thought at least back then Blizzard was still doing a lot of stuff in-house, but it wasn't the case. I think if you really wanted to try to connect dots together by reading between the lines, This was Brood War was 1998, right? 1990, probably 1997, 1998.
Yeah,
So
they were
that's
both
around the
98.
time.
This one,
That was
Brewer,
around the
was
time
November.
that Diablo 2 3D engine was being built. That then got canned because the Blizzard North was like, we don't like 3D, we can't do what we want in it. But they still had that engine, and then Blizzard South used that engine more than likely to build Warcraft 3. So I think what actually ended up happening is this was where the big shuffle between. See how it says it lists Metzen as a designer in StarCraft? That's because of his position change within Brood War.
Yeah, he was just listed
but
as a writer in Brood War, at least according to the Wikipedia article.
In StarCraft 1, he was just a writer. But oh no, maybe he was still a designer. I can't quite remember. It was told me a week or two ago. But there was another designer that disappeared in Brood War as well. But yeah, Chris Metzen ended up gaining more power, and that seems to be directly related to things going to shit. But in any event, you can put things together, and that the reason why they were outsourcing to this random company was because of a lot of their staff getting shifted to trying to deal with this 3D engine that they were trying to make Warcraft 3 with. And then Warcraft 3 changed a lot, and then people jumped ship, and ArenaNet. When was ArenaNet founded? Because this is when Blizzard saw a lot of weird shuffles where you would see World of Warcraft come out, and then like 3 or 4 different spin-offs of Blizzard also pop out and make MMOs mysteriously. Most notably being ArenaNet, but also Red 7 as well. So ArenaNet founded 2000, yeah. So ArenaNet is kind of a funny company because they made Guild Wars, which was very, very obviously they knew about Blizzard making World of Warcraft and stuff like that, and they knew this was founded in 2000, and they moved on to make Guild Wars, and there's no way that World of Warcraft is not being put together on that prototype engine, a year or two ahead of that. But they, for some reason, they were not on board with that. So they ended up with Guild Wars. And Guild Wars, for a time, was a competitor with World of Warcraft, but didn't have the brand name. And then they didn't fix a lot of the issues it had. But more bizarrely is the direction that ArenaNet took, where it started becoming an SJW company. They made Guild Wars 2, which was an absolute disaster. And they just pissed away any chance they ever had it being relevant in games. And Red 7 made Firefall, which was originally going to use, and may actually still use, the Project Offset engine that was bought by Intel, of all corporations, for some reason. And I remember that because I built my computer for that in 2009. 2 of our employees failed to standards of communicating players. They are no longer with the company. They went full BioWare. Dude, when some random fucking casual says they went full BioWare as an insult, and that's good.
Yeah,
BioWare.
so I think I
BioWare is
actually remember
another-
this because there was a bunch of shit stirring back when this happened, but I was expecting this to be a much older news story than what it actually ended up being.
BioWare used to be a decent company. Back in Neverwinter Nights, I still remember the community expansion pack. I still remember thinking, what was a good company for custom content developers? And the company that came to mind was BioWare. Because BioWare was releasing scripting updates and unified assets and stuff like that on their service, on their web space, so you didn't have to go to all these stupid fucking websites for Neverwinter Nights long after it had been released. And then Dragon Age was announced, and the first previews were like, oh, look, it's a newer Neverwinter Nights. So it looked really promising. And then you didn't hear about it for 2 or 3 years or something like that. And then they released their first trailer for it, and it was a trailer literally just like the one you showed for Borderlands. The most useless, mundane, boring, uninteresting piece of shit you could imagine, and it managed to look worse than their very first preview screenshots for Dragon Age. And everything after that was just like, how is this company still in business? How on earth is this company still in business? and they would never produce a game ever again. Neverwinter Nights was literally their sole claim to fame. They would push Neverwinter Nights 2 to Obsidian, which is like scarcely a shadow company at the very best. They would shit all over it. And then neither company would ever produce anything ever again. They would just sit there and just revel in diarrhea endlessly.
Hey, Obsidian made Fallout New Vegas.
Which was garbage because it's Fallout.
Yeah, I know. It's weird that, I don't know. Really, I just don't understand where everything went to shit for a variety of companies. It seemed to happen all at the same time. Like, Bethel points out that BioWare got acquired by EA after releasing the first Mass Effect game, which was a disaster. At that point, they were still contracted with Microsoft, but they moved on to EA, and they like had a hilarious bout of re-releasing old games and old content onto like the PS3 and shit. Like they re-released Mass Effect on PS3, and they had Demiurge Studios port the Mass Effect to PC. It was a complete fucking disaster. Fall through the world space more times than in fucking Demon Souls. So it's just like they really fell apart, and it's not like just them either though. There's like so many other companies that happen around the same time. They just all like in that 3 to 4 year period from like 05 to 09, everything went to shit, I feel like.
Yeah, it was definitely a big turning point. I mean, 2000 was bad for the game industry in general, but 2005 was like the Twin Towers crashing down.
Yeah. Speaking of Twin Towers crashing down, there is one more major gaming-related controversy that has been on the hearts and minds of everybody. That is the whole games as a service. A while ago, a YouTuber named Accursed Farms, which is not Kiwi Farms, I already checked and I was very disappointed, released a video called Games as a Service is Fraud. That's what I'll picture here. This beautiful man.
It is.
Released a video on April 25th, 2019, so pretty recently. And in it, he goes over how games as a service is fraud. And he talks about all the varying reasons why. And he talks about how in the spirit of the law and blah, blah, blah. And it's a pretty long video. If you haven't already seen it, I recommend watching it even if you don't end up agreeing with what he says. Because he sort of is a little meandering. Obviously, it is rather long. Then this man released a video as a lawyer responding to this Accursed Farms guy, and sort of agreed with the end result, even though he didn't agree with like the reasoning that went through. But basically, there is apparently a legal argument for games as a service being fraud, is like what the bottom line is. And if you don't feel like, wading through an hour and a half worth of YouTube videos in order to figure that out, really just use common sense for the most part. But there they are. Look at them, read them, and weep. And I just want to bring that up because people are really getting up in arms over this stuff. Nobody's really happy with games as a service, and I don't know why it's taken so long for people to realize that it's just shit. In fact, actually, one of the hilarious things, tying back into the whole Unreal discussion we had a while ago, like the Epic Games discussion, I wanted to bring this up earlier, but Cliff Bleszinski, I'm sure you're familiar with this gentleman. He's the guy behind Gears of War and later on Bulletstorm.
That's the guy who made an ass out of himself so many times.
Yes, he was quoted as like something about... He basically was like, if you remember the Battlefield 5 controversy where they were like, if you don't like our game, don't buy it or something, and then nobody bought it?
Yes.
It's like he basically did the same thing. I think he actually... It kind of reminds me of that Ben Kuchera guy who I believe Wybod was on Twitter like asking him, he's like, didn't you do any research? And Ben Kuchera was just like, deal with it as a response. It's a pretty good reply actually, but he's basically like that kind of guy. Cliffy B's just been in the news time and time again. His reputation's really just shot, and is it any wonder? And so that guy eventually went on to make Lawbreakers, and if you haven't heard of Lawbreakers, you'd be forgiven because it was open for about 2 weeks and then they shut it down.
The name
pulled the plug.
is actually familiar.
It's supposed to be an Overwatch competitor, and so you know everything you need to know about it just based off of that. And so it died back in like 2015, 2016, whenever it came out, very shortly after launch. And maybe it wasn't 2 weeks, maybe I'm thinking of a different game, but it was pretty quick after launch that it died. It didn't last very long at all. And not only did it die, but he actually their company or whatever pulled all of the, like, it was an online only DRM infested piece of shit, and nobody can play the game anymore. The server architecture wasn't, like, the source code for the servers or whatever wasn't leaked or anything. There was no release of anything. So people bought this game for like $60. They can't play it anymore. They haven't been able to play it since like 2 months after it released. And that's one of the main arguments for the whole games as a service as a fraud thing, because it tries to be a game that you buy and then you've paid for it. You're supposed to own some sort of copy of it or license of it or whatever. And all of these, I think we've talked about this before, but all the end user license agreements where they say like, oh, you don't actually own this game, you only own a license to it, and we can revoke it at any time. None of that shit would hold up in court. It just hasn't been challenged. Yeah. And so that's another argument in favor of this whole games as a services fraud thing. And the problem is there's people like that Mark Kern guy, I forget his handle on Twitter, but he was the guy I referenced in my None So Mortal Diablo Immortal video. And I was talking about how, this guy was like an ex-Blizzard developer. He worked on World of Warcraft or whatever. He seems to be apologizing for the games as a service thing, partially because he's tired of people like using this word, because I guess like that term triggers him for some reason. And he doesn't really like the idea of it, maybe because it ropes in World of Warcraft, which is like one of his claims to fame, which is hilarious. But, it's when you're starting
associated with it.
Yeah, I know. When you're starting to, defend anything like this, when you can even be construed as defending, whether or not I'm putting words in his mouth or whatever, like that's not for me to decide, really. I haven't bothered really looking at his stance. But when you're being like, constantly accused of supporting games as a service because, for whatever reason, like you're trying to make a principled stance. I don't know if you can even make a principled stance when you developed World of Warcraft. I think you like revoked that right.
You kind of revoke your right to being a human being, to be honest.
Yeah. So I don't really know about that one. Like that's pretty rough. One of the issues that people take it with the whole games as a service thing, irrespective of any one individual, is just the fact that we can pay for a product and then lose access and rights to be able to play that product. Like, it's absolutely insane. And it's not reasonable to, decrypt or reverse engineer a whole bunch of these, server architecture files and like everything else related to the game itself as well, just so that we can run a private server, just so that other people can connect. So the whole idea of the always online DRM was already shit. That was before companies could just decide to pull the plug and then you could never play your game again that you paid for. Like, if you guys, there's like that whole Sims controversy, like the Sim,
when
whatever.
Diablo 3 came out, Blizzard was like, oh yeah, it needs to be always online, otherwise it doesn't work. And then the Chinese were like, oh yeah, by the way, we have it working.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it can be gotten around for sure, and I'm not surprised that people get around Blizzard's, hacks or whatever very easily, because, I mean, one dude in fucking Finland did it, and that's how we have mods for Remastered now. So I don't really understand how anybody gets sort of slowed down even by Blizzard. It's more like a very basic entry barrier. Not that I can do it myself, but like I'm fairly confident in my skills to be able to study enough to figure out what I need to do if I needed to do something like that. And that's pretty sad because I have no skills in programming whatsoever. So when you get somebody like me, like maybe that's just the Dunning-Kruger effect or whatever, but it doesn't seem like it's that challenging with Blizzard, especially with the classic games shit where they obviously don't really care that much about like privacy or anything like that. But it's just very strange to me that you have all of this always online DRM, and like another component of that is privacy. Actually, it is like the whole tracking thing. Like they're downloading some sort of metadata. All of these devices have like location enabled by default. Like you can't turn it off. Who knows what else they're grabbing from your client, basically, and what other information they're grabbing from your machine. And they say it's in the name of making sure that they don't get piracy destroying them, but it's actually better and safer for you to download a cracked version of these games, just because it's better for your machine. It's going to run better because the DRM isn't running in the background. You don't have to deal with fucking Uplay or Blizzard Battle.net app, whatever. Like,
that's the same with production software.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is a widespread practice, even though you own it, to use pirated versions because the DRM actually can brick your hard drive. Like, it is actually destructible to physical objects on your machine.
Yeah,
because of the way it fucks with shit on your computer.
Yeah, this is one of those
instances,
like
a USB dongle and all this other dumb shit.
Dongle.
I wish I was making it's not fucking made up. Like, it's real.
Yeah,
and that's why people just pirate this shit willy nilly, because it's like they go out of their way to make it as annoying for legitimate users as possible and as unsafe for legitimate users as possible.
Yep. Not to mention the prices are exorbitant to the point where there is no legitimate users that are willing to do it unless they already have like a student license.
Unless you're on someone's payroll and they're paying for it, you can't afford it.
Yeah.
Especially with the new subscription shit they've got.
Yeah. So that's all
'Cause you have to
an entire
subscribe now.
disaster. Yeah, you do have
For
to
Photoshop and stuff
subscribe.
like that, you have to subscribe for it.
So that's the whole software as a service entering into the conversation as well, because now you're no longer
Absolute cancer.
you're no longer like paying just to own a product license. You're paying to own a temporary fucking license that they just decide to revoke when you stop paying them.
The other problem with it is it's not just you're paying for that one license, you're actually paying for a bunch of licenses in Adobe's case. You're actually hiking the prices for it, I believe, as well. You pay, like, say you just want Photoshop. I think it's actually really hard just to get Photoshop because you end up paying for like the CS bundle. So
Right.
you're actually paying for this retarded overpriced garbage when you just want the one thing, which performs worse than just like hired off of something like CG Peers anyways. So there's like no incentive for anybody with any remote education at all to actually get into this. You don't want to support Adobe because they're making bad decisions. You don't want to use the new software because it's worse than the old software. So like there's no real reason to continue paying for this shit, whether you don't like piracy or not. There's like no sane reason for you to actually willfully use this shit. It's fucking insane. And what is really sad is that Adobe bought Substance. So hope you got those old Substance Designer versions.
Well, I'm sure they'll be
the new ones
archived
are going to
somewhere.
be cancer. They're on Steam, or at least they were on Steam. I own it on Steam, but the new ones are going to be absolute garbage, and they're going to be tied into that monthly purchasing thing. They're being very tight-lipped about the pricing options and stuff like that because Adobe is going to take full control and it's going to fuck up everything. And it was like one of the most like widely used promising software out there now, and Adobe just sucked it up and fucked everybody over because Substance was basically killing Photoshop for game developers because there's no reason to use Photoshop anymore except for little odds and ends. And if you just need little odds and ends, why pay however much for Photoshop? Just use something like Paint Tool Sai or Krita or something, or GIMP. But Adobe was like, nope, we'll just buy this instead.
Yeah, is it any surprise?
Just pay more money.
Really puts it into perspective when people are always like, just the tech monopoly thing is absolutely insane when you have all these companies doing that, like Facebook buying Instagram and WhatsApp and shit and all this other stuff. Like I'm just amazed, perpetually amazed that the legislature is so far behind the technology. Like I'm not really for the whole government control thing, but there's actually no fucking alternative that I can think of. Obviously the free market isn't going to do anything about this because this is what got us here, is the free market. So the fact that there was no government intervention is what facilitated the situation the hellscape that we're in now, where shit's getting fucking hiked up to insane prices because my subscription. So I don't know, ridiculous. Man.
Like I've used 3ds Max since like 3ds Max 4 or 5 or something. They haven't changed hardly anything to 2016. Like certainly not worth keeping up with it and buying new seat licenses for every single version. There's just no fucking gain. Like every so many versions they mess around with Max script to make it break compatibility with old scripts. That's one of their ways of trying to lock people into new versions. But so little actually changes in the product that couldn't have just been a patch. And 3ds Max was bought by Autodesk, who does nothing with it. So now you still have Maya, you still have Autodesk, and they still are both really different in what they're actually good at doing. And both of them haven't really changed at all for their entire lifespans because they're basically like largely feature complete. All that really
just like
needs
Photoshop
to be done is like making the UI and stuff better. But that's not what this is about. This is why like Photoshop keeps getting new changes and just fucking around the interface. Because when something is feature complete, how do you stay relevant as a staff member? You have to convince people that you can do something to make the user experience better, which generally means using more memory and more CPU and changing the colors in the interface and just moving stuff around. That's why that keeps happening, is people are trying to stay relevant in their job. But the project is feature complete when you should be seeing the interface actually get improved. But the thing is, like, improvements and bug fixes, those don't look good on release notes. Those don't encourage people to buy new seats for their company. So you gotta be like, oh, it's innovative and new and improved. Like there was HKS was just telling me today that there's a humble bundle for Vegas 15, and I just want to dig up the name of it. Is absolutely crazy. It's Vegas. Let me grab it. I just gotta check the website. And the name is weird because I think Sony no longer owns it. It's just called Vegas, but
I feel like that's also been feature complete since like
Vegas Pro 15 Edit. They just threw in edit
fuck
into
yeah.
the name. Like Vegas is another program I've used for years since I first made Stabby Man back in like 2006 or something. No, I used it for Halo PC, which may have been 2014, whatever. I've used it for years. It has not changed at all. I'm using 14 today. It has not changed at all since then. They've literally done nothing to it at all. It is still just as unstable and fucked up. It still doesn't support modern formats. It still has issues where if you have thumbnails on it, it just leaks memory like fucking crazy. Like the project will actually leak memory in itself, like built into the project.
Yeah, you just have to close and reopen just like Photoshop.
So what they do for version 15 is they attach the name edit to it.
Done. New version.
So now it's called Vegas Pro 15 Edit.
Perfect.
Like, maybe Vegas Pro 15 does have a lot of changes. Who knows? I'm not going to find out. But why attach the name edit? Like that right off the bat just screams that you just don't even know what to do anymore. You just got to get more sales somehow. it's like, what the fuck? And why is it called Pro? Like, this harkens us back to Pro Gold Edition 2000. Like, it's just like buzzwords.
Yeah. Just like that Stadia website, dude.
It really is.
Top of the line middleware.
Like, they're not even trying to hide it anymore. At least they're being honest.
Yeah. Well, I only really have one more story here lined up that I found while I was perusing, looking for some articles to riff off of. You probably are already familiar with this, but just in case anybody else isn't, because it pertains to some topics that are repeating. Roll20 is a platform you use and have used for a while. And I have here, from February 15th of this year, popular RPG site Roll20 allegedly had 4 million users' information stolen.
Yeah,
allegedly.
There is a notice about that. So they only found out when some third-party website announced it.
Right.
And yeah.
Ow.
This shit's always fucking glorious. So Roll20 was a scam starter. I think they rose about $40,000 or something dollars. They have not worked on the website at all since they launched it, except for very, very minor stuff, usually breaking things. And they're only using WebGL for dice rolls and nothing else, which is very buggy, actually. Their dice will get like stuck on each other and twitch around violently. PhysX is actually more functional than their dice rolls, unbelievably. And
why is this fucking image so huge? Dude.
So the Reddit people are actually apologists, and they use Reddit. The Roll20 developers use Reddit, of course. And I believe I told you guys about the Fanburst fiasco.
Yeah, because they Fanburst lost funding or whatever, and then
I actually don't know if they lost funding. Like, there was no actual reasoning given. Lots of people were offering to help them out with funding, but I have heard that Patreon is not sustainable for a lot of websites anyways. No matter, even if you have like 200,000 viewers, it doesn't sustain you very well, apparently. But yeah, there was, of course, another security breach on these websites because it's just Reddit people. Roll20 is just comprised of middleware and other people's shit and just slapped together without any care in the world. And they're desperately trying to scrape money off of people. they're desperately trying to scrape money off of people. So, have you used Imager?
Yeah.
What is
Oh,
while
you cut out.
the account base? What is the account limit for uploading images on Imager?
There's a limit?
Right? There's a limit.
Yeah.
So Fanburst had no limit, and YouTube has no limit. Now, granted, YouTube was an existing platform, Google. So that's not the best of examples in this case, but YouTube, Google Video, Nico, so on and so forth. All these services really just don't have limits on the size of stuff because web space is cheap, right? It's very, very cheap. Roll20 has a limit of 100 megabytes. You are expected to put together a D&D game or another tabletop game with music, images, sound effects, any of this other data onto 100 megabytes. Now, for the amount of money that you could pay for a 3 terabyte hard drive, you can have, I think, 6 gigabytes, which is not really that much because you're using PNGs for your stuff. So, and music and stuff like that. Apparently, even if you are paying the maximum amount of money that you can have for a Plus account on Roll20, you still can't upload a audio file exceeding 20 megabytes.
Well, that's like most music, though, isn't it? Unless it's really short.
You use ambient. This is for D&D, right?
Yeah.
So you usually have a lot of ambient tracks, like just long looping ambient sounds. And even like a shitty MP3, that's going to be larger than 20 megabytes. And if you have 6 gigabytes of storage, chances are you want to use it to build some audio. So 20 megabytes is not really that great. But it's just like an arbitrary limit. Like, just here's 20 megabytes. Like, it's enough to pirate music. If you wanted to use it to pirate music, 20 megabytes is more than enough. But for like actual game purposes, 20 megabytes is not enough. It literally is just an arbitrary limit just to be a limit because the people who made the service don't actually use it. And they're there just to try to get gullible people to give them money for something that they don't understand. People have actually tried to defend this by saying they spend $3 on coffee a day. And that because Roll20 is cheaper than that's a good deal. Like, fucking what?
If you spend $3 on coffee every day, you got bigger problems than Roll20.
Like, the fact that anybody can conceive of this being defensible is insane. The fact that people think that web space for stuff like this is a problem are also insane. Because if web space was actually a legitimate issue for Roll20, they would allow you to use external hosts, such as Imager, or your own personal web space for your files. But you can't do that. You're locked into their service alone unless you use an add-on for Chrome. If you use an add-on for Chrome, then you can use external image things. An add-on they have tried to ban people for using because it lets you circumvent their shitty arbitrary limitations.
I like this quote here. Roll20 only maintains user's name, email address, hash password, last login IP and time of login, and last 4 digits of user's credit card. Well, what they don't tell you is last login IP and time of login is pretty much your address, like your physical location in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah,
passwords
that's
are
great.
a pretty big deal. The thing is this kind of shit happens all the time. A lot of it doesn't get publicized, but like banks and hotels and other people get their information leaked all the time. And you'll notice, like, what this article says is that they just end up on some place where people can just buy it for child porn bucks, aka Bitcoins.
Yep.
And
yeah, it's selling for $10,000 or something.
There's just like I mean, it's like a slightly darker, more African version of Google that has all this fucking information about you. All these emails and all these hashed passwords or whatever, and they get cross-referencing and number crunching. That's where a lot of the theft comes from. A lot of the phishing and everything else.
Yeah.
And actually, as an issue that with Unreal, yet again, is because Fortnite shares the login services with Unreal 4, all of our accounts have had many, many attempts of people trying to get into them.
Oh, that doesn't surprise me at all.
It's pretty good.
That would be an epic gamer moment, getting hacked by a Fortnite hacker.
Yeah. 12 years old, and he's already got $80,000 of foreign money.
Of Bitcoin.
It's insanity. But yeah, Roll20 is a fucking scam. And I can't wait for our client to be done so I can stop using it. Because it's a fucking pain in the ass. Like, it's a little early to talk about that client, but when I can show some of the stuff in it, like when it's a little more feature complete, because I could show a lot of stuff, but it'd be better to show all of it at once. But the fact is that somebody can kind of just walk into Unreal without any real prior experience in making games or anything like this, and make something that's feature complete as Roll20, but functionally superior in basically every single fashion within, what was it, like 4 or 5 months of off and on? That's fucking crazy. That's without the $40,000 either.
Yeah.
That's without the $40,000.
Where did that go, man?
I think it went to cocaine and hookers.
Learning from Metzen.
Because they're making a lot of money off of their marketplace and publishing and promoting deals for Wizards of the Coast.
Yes, so this is the same platform that you were telling me about like years ago. People were paying like $8 for a fucking barrel JPEG or something,
yes.
right?
Yeah. So that's where a lot of their money is coming off of. They get a lot of money out of it.
Oh,
There's a lot of people still paying subscriptions. There's a lot of people still buying JPEGs off of it.
Yeah, well, think about it. I mean, most of the people
it doesn't go into the service.
Of course,
it never seems to go into the service.
No, that'll never happen. I mean, most of the people who are the hobbyists who are playing D&D, like I mean, if you look at like what you needed to spend, like the barrier for entry in terms of just cost, let alone knowledge or whatever else, actually having a circle of friends in real life that you could handle this stuff with, this is all like stuff you really needed to invest money into. And that's where you get these platforms that aren't even like Roll20, like the ones that were actually premium platforms that were on Steam and so many other platforms that were like hundreds of dollars for licenses. And like people just were expected to pony up that cash because like if you have ever tried to buy dice in like physical dice, like some of those can be really expensive, and depending on miniatures are
ridiculous.
Yep, books. Some of them are $20, $30.
The thing is, those books are garbage.
Yeah,
I've read through them. They're bad. They are bad. Like for 5th edition, I've gone through all the fucking data on 5e tools. All the monster blocks are literally copy pasted off of each other. None of them have anything creative in them whatsoever, except for like 3 or 4 of them. They are really, 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 really bland and bad. Like a CR24 or a CR30 literally does nothing besides auto attack and reflect spells, and then have devour that every other large creature has. Like they don't put any effort into their monsters at all.
It sounds like a Warcraft 3 NPC or something.
Buy this. It's worse than World of Warcraft. It's actually worse. It's horrible. The monsters are absolutely horrendously badly designed. Like making my D&D stuff, I had to throw out everything that I was reading. I just flat out stopped reading anything from the official assets within like 5 sessions because I realized that all the fucking 5th edition content is terribly done. That they just put no fucking effort into it whatsoever. And this is shit people are paying for.
Yes.
And I went ahead and I read some of the adventure guides that they sell, and they are really badly done as well. It's like, here's a map. Here's where stuff is. You could do this. You could do that. Okay. All right. Do this, do that. It's like a point by point, kind of like telling you what to do. And it's supposed to like start off a new dungeon master, except there's really not a lot of in-depth talk about what being a dungeon master is or what it's about or ways you could flex on things. It's more like a point by point like PowerPoint presentation of you should do this, you should do that. It's like everything you hate out of fucking tutorials, like especially video tutorials that are like, okay, and now it's done. Congratulations. You just modeled a AAA car, but he didn't like actually explain.
Yeah, there's no learning
why he did it. That's the problem with all these things, and the books are just like that.
That's not really any surprise, honestly. I remember they actually had adventure guides, which were basically the same thing, but you paid for them. as what you're like talking about. They point
Yeah.
I point like setups.
Yeah. So it's some pretty bland shit. And I don't know about the earlier D&D games or stuff like that. I haven't read into it, but
yeah, I still have the 3.5 books lying around somewhere. The monsters aren't really that great, but they typically were a little bit more at least varied in their movesets than what you're describing. Like a lot of them had a bunch of weird special shit that was documented and took a lot longer to just write down. But 3.5 was also a lot more complex. They had like a lot more random moving parts that felt very disconnected to actually play. So I think the only other one that I had any experience with was the 4th edition.
Fucking around there.
So
yeah, 5th edition just was like the phone generation D&D, and they definitely treated their manuals like that as well. 5th edition was like, we gotta make it casual friendly because everybody uses phones now. So they simplified some stuff that didn't need to be simplified, I feel, but they didn't try to take advantage of what they had, especially in terms of like monster design. And all of their stock assets and stuff, all their monsters are really bland. Really, 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 really bland. And their feats and stuff like that are very unexplored. And of course, they segregate everything out, so you have to pay for extra bucks for stuff that. And the other thing that really gets me too is that I can't remember the names of the books, but there's like 2 different books that add player races. But the one book just republishes the same races that Xanthar's guide had. It just republishes like the Goliath and maybe the Goblin or something like that. Like they just basically literally resell old content. And that kind of shit, like that should just be plainly illegal. All the shit that this fucking company does should just be outright illegal. Like, because it is just literally fraud. It's scamming.
yeah, it's almost it's very similar actually to the interactive software that we partake of. Just reselling old shit, recycling stuff.
That's what this was made for. This wasn't made for people who played D&D. This is for the phone generation, the people who are, interested in the quirky pen and paper tabletop.
Hipsters.
I'm not really sure why I got so popular now, but before, I mean, it was like basically the role-playing experience, but it gave a way to turn role-playing into something that you could actually like, have rules that arbitrate what actually happens when you try to do stuff. But 5th edition really was... It fixed some things and it made a mess of everything else. And Pathfinder was for people who really wanted to get technical into stuff and, have arms races and customize and other kind of like actual RPG stuff. And 4th edition, I heard, was very polarized in how people liked it and how people didn't like it because of the way it changed combat and stuff like that. I haven't really looked into it, but 5th edition was like a swing around. It was like, we got to make it for phone users because phone users are dumb. So let's make this game so simple that even dummies can play it. But to actually play it well as a DM is still really difficult, and you don't get the resources to do that from official content. It's actually really, really hard to actually run games, especially when you're surrounded by platforms like Roll20 that are more interested in scamming you than making the process friendly.
Yeah, I mean, the main issue I think that comes from all this stuff is just at some point you get to a situation where you're dealing with a niche market, and the people who actually want to learn how to run games and play characters at a, if you want to call it a high level, maybe that makes sense in this context. People who are willing to put in the work to figure out how to have the most fun and fulfillment out of their hobby experiences. Those people are fewer and far in between. Like you said, people are more about instant gratification, which is the whole phone generation comment. So it makes sense, I guess, that would be where they cater towards in some ways. Like you could look at it from a business standpoint, but D&D was literally never about mass appeal. So I don't know why they tried to go for it this time around. Like, at what point did
every game try to go for it?
Yeah.
Why does World of Warcraft try to go for it? Why does StarCraft 2 try to go for it? Because that's where the larger money is. You've always got to make more money. So you got to get more people. And the best way to make more people is to water everything down to the point that it is not as threatening at all. That there's no hard edges. So that they can just swallow that cock.
No teeth, no biting.
Nobody really likes any of the fucking niche stuff anymore, except for, like, I guess parts of Europe and Japan. But everybody else is like, nope, gotta go big, gotta be popular, gotta do what everybody else is doing. It's like I said earlier, you got like Titanfall, no longer about Titans, it's about Call of Duty. You got Fortnite, no longer about being some kind of Minecraft clone. Now it's about Battle Royale. And now you got Unreal 4, which is now trying to just do too many things at once instead of finishing basic stuff.
Yeah, we can only hope that the people figure out what the fuck they're doing with that Unreal Engine. Like, Epic in general is just such a disconnected company from top to bottom, like we were talking about earlier, between their brief stint with consoles to running back to PC with a failed shooter to whatever the fuck Unreal 4 is, to whatever the fuck Fortnite is, to the whole Epic Games launcher as well. Where do they even get to the point where they could actually make exclusivity deals with people? And for another reason, like, what the fuck is going on with people even claim? Like, I feel like exclusivity is really just the wrong word for that. Like, I mean, I guess it's an Epic Games exclusive or Epic Launcher exclusive, but I don't know, man. I still don't really fully, even though I really have a strong distaste for Tencent and I really don't like the whole interconnectivity thing and like that data mining shit. It's kind of just a fact of reality at this point because it's gonna be so long before legislature actually gets into a point where it's actually prohibiting this stuff and punishing companies. And can you even really punish companies that are literally from China and stuff? Like, they're not even locally sourced. So I don't even know how you would do that in America or any of the other like Western countries. So I don't know what the path to fixing that particular thing is. So, I mean, not that you should be pleased with data mining, but there's so many people that are up in arms about that. And again, it's sort of like they just need something to be up in arms about almost. They don't actually know why they're upset, or they do, but they like don't. They're focusing on like such a surface thing. I don't know. It's really weird. It's really awkward to try to explain, but if you were really upset about something related to the whole Epic Games launcher thing, like, you got to also take into account the whole Steam monopoly shit and how they're just destroying like developers with their cuts, and how even if you look past that, the whole fucking act of developing a game at this point is so insane because you're dealing with investors more than you're dealing with your consumers, and playing second fiddle to your publisher's demands and all this executive shit and marketing telling you whether or not you can look at your testers' feedback. Like, just insane shit from top to bottom. It's all broken. It's all fucked up. And I don't see how any of like worrying about which launcher you have to start up and which one is tracking you more than the others is really the top priority here. Not that, again, it's something that you should just ignore, but it's really not, I don't think, what everybody's freaking out over, or what everybody should be freaking out over when you consider everything else that's happening.
I bet all the people that complain about Unreal Launcher and Tencent use Chrome and Facebook.
Well, probably, yeah.
I guarantee it, because that's what these fucking people do. They go on Facebook and then they complain about security. They use Chrome and they complain about security.
Yeah. They, listen, if you have a phone and you complain about security, it's kind of hypocritical. I recognize that.
But Amazon is also very under the radar, but they're just as scummy as everybody else is.
Yeah, they've evaded taxes for a third year because 3. Oh, by the way, I forgot to even talk about the title of this fucking episode. We're winding down anyway, so I'll just have a couple of last points to hit on, and then we can take questions or whatever if there are any, and then we can head to sleep. But, so the reason why this is called Fatherdumb is yesterday was my father's 52nd birthday, and he's doxxed now, so bye. But aside from that, for his birthday, we went to the phone store, and it wasn't because he was getting a new phone. It was because earlier this week, at least 3 times, because 3, he told me that he was going to the phone store, and he was asking me if I wanted to come with him. I said every single time he asked me, I was in the middle of something, or I was about to be in the middle of something, and so it just didn't work out timing-wise. Then I hopped in the car. We were supposed to go over to my mother's house for some food, and instead he said, we're going to the phone store. So he still hadn't gone after all these fucking times that he said he was going. We go to the phone store. We get there. I'm like, hey, actually, I need to take a shit. So I run. I book it. I really had to take a shit. I book it to the nearest store. while I'm walking in there, there's like a Latina woman walking out, and the door is opening super slowly, and I'm actually like strong arming the fucking door open, like it's not one of those automatic doors. And I'm like, as I'm like looking at her, probably with this like I really have to shit expression on my face, I'm like, wow, this is a slow door, huh? And she was like, haha, and left. So that was funny. And then I continue running inside the store until I find the bathroom. Somebody was shitting in the men's room, so I go to the family bathroom, which is supposed to be for changing your kid's diaper, and I just decided to change my diaper instead. So that was crazy. And then somebody was knocking on the door. I was like, yeah, I'll be out in a minute. And I came out like an hour later. Not really. It was like 2 minutes later. But they were long gone when I came out. And then I run out of the store, and I run all the way across the parking lot. I run across the street into the phone store, and they were still in the middle of dealing with all their shit. I was like, any luck? And they were like, yeah, of course. And then we waited there for like another half hour. Now, the reason why this is important, besides being retarded, now, like I said, Fatherdumb. So I have a one phone here. It's a Samsung phone, pretty recent, and that's the phone that I got from the most recent carrier that I was with. Now, the way that we got it is like this phone's like $900 fucking or something. I don't know I don't know why they do that. It's just part of like the contract is like try to entice you to lock into the contract so that you get this phone. You like slowly pay it off over time. It's a big scam. All of the companies here do it. Now, my father just decided one day he was going to stop paying the phone bill. And so he's like, yeah, don't pay me for your phone anymore. I was like, okay. And he's like, I'm done paying the bill. I was like, okay. And then they kept sending him like envelopes to mail the phones back, and he just ignored them. And then he's like, all right, bring your other phone, your old phone, the one from before, and we're going to reactivate that one. And so I did. And that was what we brought to the phone store. And so he's reactivating my phone, or so I think. Then we go into so they're like, hey, by the way, do you want a new phone? I was like, what do you mean? You're reactivating my current phone. Like, I'm going to already have two phones. And they're like, yeah, but this one's free. And so my father was like, yeah, just give it to us. So now I have fucking 3 phones. 3! I have 3 phones! 2 of them have the same fucking phone number. And the old one that I was originally supposed to get just to have 2 phones isn't even fucking activated on the plan. So I don't get my old phone number. I can't get calls on the old one because he stopped paying the bill for that one. I can't get calls on the new old one that isn't even on the plan because it's not on the plan. I can only get calls on the very brand new one. That's actually the oldest one out of all of them in terms of like how recent it is. Because it's a new phone number, and that is on the plan. So I have 3 phones, and only one of them can take calls, and the rest just connect to my Wi-Fi and eat up my fucking bandwidth. So I have 3 phones, and that was how I spent my father's fucking birthday. So there you go. At least now I'm not tethered to Wi-Fi, and I can listen to Alex Jones ranting at double speed while taking a run. How I missed thee. So that was my experience recently. That was why I was not available yesterday, because after 3 phones, I was ready for fucking bed. And I didn't wake up until you were already done. So that's why we did it today instead.
Oh, shit.
3.
3.
So, speaking of 3, you were working on a Warcraft 3 project recently.
Yeah.
Let's hear the update about that, because that'll be entertaining.
I'm canning that fucking thing. So I was like, hey, I can make these cinematics and voice act this stuff, and I can probably get 3ds Max and stuff working, and this will be we'll see what happens. I'll stick my dick in there and see what bites.
Crash.
So I made a map, and I stuck a bunch of CPU players in it, and I was like, well, I'm probably gonna have to get into JAS for this to some extent because I know the AI editor, quote unquote, is not very good. But I was like, well, we'll just get a functional example in here and see if it still freezes my hardware, because Warcraft 3 will do that. Turns out it just freezes everything. It just crashed everything constantly. So
You fixed it by accident by editing terrain, and then it broke again
Yeah, and then it broke again. Yeah,
because you were like
I
trying to fix their attacks or something.
Well, I actually have no idea why it crashes. They never get to the point of attacking.
Oh, okay.
I actually think it has something to do with build space, or at least I thought it did. But I made everything all super Billy big, and they were still crashing. And I had lots of issues trying to get them to build stuff. Of course, lumber harvesters were an eternal issue that I sort of fixed, and I spent days trying to fix it. And I was like, you know what? I can try to fix this, or I can just do something else. So I went and did something else instead. I've just given up. I can't.
It's over,
I can't
boys.
deal. Like it's so fucking annoying because you spend an entire day like just trying to wonder why the game is freezing within like 2 or 3 minutes of starting the game, and nothing you change matters. And normally, if the AI is busted, it just nothing happens. It just encounters a JAS error, and it just doesn't work anymore.
It just hangs.
And you have no idea why, but
No.
it just doesn't work anymore. So you know something's wrong. But that's not what's happening. They were building stuff and training stuff and everything in there, and then it was just like randomly freezing. And I had no idea why. Like, this is actually something I've never run into in all the time I've made Warcraft 3 stuff of way greater complexity than this. I attempted a lot of campaigns. So I had a theory that it was possibly due to the new version of Warcraft 3 that they broke even more than just desyncing everything on Belnet, that maybe there was actually something really seriously busted with the game itself. But I wasn't really willing to like downgrade it to find out. And I had already spent like 2 or 3 days just basically freezing the game, going back, scratching my head, changing terrain, changing our own JAS, disabling, enabling the AI builder scripts, and just freezing the game more, and just basically gave up. So fuck that.
Well,
It was very annoying. I'll just
at least
I'll work on StarCraft 2 eventually. Again, eventually.
eventually.
I did a test actually on this new system. So I'm using a Ryzen 7. Is it a 7? 4.7 gigahertz, water cooled, 32 gigs of RAM, and a new motherboard, everything like that. SSD. And StarCraft 2 can still take me down to 19 FPS with 2 computer players on a small map. Because that is just how well StarCraft 2's AI performs. But the AI, the FPS floor for the Terran map was about 30, 40, which is pretty good. The Zerg map could hover around 30 for a lot of the times. The 19 is when combat hit. So it's actually like playable now. So in order to get StarCraft 2 to be playable with AI, you just need like a $3,000, $4,000 system.
Of course, you need a supercomputer.
Yeah, you need one of the most powerful processors on the market right now. So, at the end of the day, I can actually play it, so that gives me more incentive to actually like try to research some stuff with StarCraft 2 and try to get it a little bit more functional. So, whereas before it was looking kind of bleak because I could make maps functional, but I had to like really lower the scale of the maps just to be able to actually like test them myself. But the Zerg map was by far the most performance intensive of the tests I had on hand. I haven't done any other tests beyond just that what I had set up before. But I don't really have a reason to believe that the number of computer players will really affect it too much. I don't know why the Zerg is so much worse than the Terran. I'm assuming it's Larva. But
it's probably creep. Creep is really GPU intensive as far as I remember.
This is all CPU. Like your performance, your settings, your graphics settings, they don't affect the FPS in this. They never did.
Oh.
It is literally raw CPU.
Reasonable.
It is just 100% raw CPU.
Yeah, it's probably the AI manually ordering their larva around every frame.
I really do think it has to do with something with the AI iterating through all of its larvae every tick, because, well, the larvae are units, and the AI does iterate through every possible unit type to go through unit types and make a bunch if and or statements whenever anything is made. And but I also kind of want to try to disable set stock entirely and try to use a build chain like Warcraft 3, but I think that if I do that, I have to change the way the AI behaves in other ways. Because I wasn't able to get that to work through triggers in the past. I haven't tried it with the melee system, but it's something I do want to attempt at some point. But that's probably going to be a later in the year kind of thing, since I have a lot of other stuff I want to catch up on, and I have a lot of IRL work to do. But yeah, I'm ditching Warcraft 3, and I'll probably try to get StarCraft 2 stuff working at some point. But I won't be surprised if I ditch that too at some point. But at least I know for a fact my maps are not freezing me on contact. And generally,
Yet.
StarCraft 2 will... Yeah, yet. I have crashed it a couple times, I believe, with the AI before. But I hopefully should avoid AI-related explosions at least, I think.
One can hope. Meanwhile, according to my email, I've received a gift copy of Shower with Your Dad Simulator. So I guess I know what I'm playing next.
I can thank Don for that, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, he's the one.
He's a good man.
First,
All right.
hunt down the
well,
fuck.
I gotta take off and feed some cats, so...
Hey, it's been a good podcast. Thanks to you for joining me. Thanks to Balethal for all joining us. And thanks to everybody else who fucked around and jerked off to our voices. And make sure you smoke weed with your father in the shower.
Sitting outside your window jerking it.
Don?
N?
Happy birthday, Necron!
Happy birthday, Necron.